Chapter 17, Trouble in Arkansas. Next morning we started out in broad daylight. After breakfast, the king took a seat on the corner of the raft, pulled off his boots, and let his legs dangle in the water. Then he lit his pipe and went to getting his Romeo and Juliet by heart. Then the Duke went to practicing it with him. The Duke had to teach him how to say every speech. You mustn't blow out Romeo, that way, like a bull. You must say it soft and loving. Romeo. Juliet is a dear, sweet, mere child of a girl. She wouldn't bray like a jackass. So he went to marching up and down, thinking and frowning. Then he would hoist up his eyebrows. Next he would squeeze his hand on his forehead and stagger back and kind of moan. Well, all that day we floated along, and the raft was a lively place, acting going on all the time. That night we tied the raft to the shore and slept. The Duke said the play was ready to give. Next morning we came in sight of a little one-horse town and tied the raft about a mile above, in the mouth of a creek behind some trees. All of us but Jim went to town to see if there was any chance for our show. We struck it lucky. It was circus day, and there would be a crowd. Country people were already coming in. The circus would leave before night, so our show would have a pretty good chance. The Duke hired the courthouse, and we went around and stuck up our bills. They read like this: Shakespeare Revival, for one night only, the world-famous actor, David Garrick, the younger, of London, and Edmund Kean, the elder, of London, the balcony scene, and Romeo and Juliet. Romeo, Mr. Garrick. Juliet, Mr. Kean. Assisted by the whole strength of the company. New costumes, new scenery, new appointments. Admission, 25 cents. Children and servants, 10 cents. Then we went loafing around town. The houses were old shacks that had never been painted, set up on stilts to be out of reach of water when the river overflowed. Each house was fenced in with a garden spot, but the gardens had nothing in them but weeds and sunflowers, and ash piles, and old curled-up boots, and pieces of bottles. Some of the fences had been whitewashed a long time ago. The Duke said maybe in Columbus's time. All the stores had white domestic whinings in front. Loafers roosted under them all day long, whittling and chewing tobacco, and yawning and stretching. They called one another Bill, Buck, Hink, Joe, and Andy, and talked lazy and drawly with a lot of cuss words. What you would hear them say most was, "Give me a chaw of tobacco, Hink." "Can't, I ain't got one, but chaw left," asked Bill. The street was just mud as black as tar, a foot deep in some places, and 2 or 3 inches deep in all places. You would see a muddy sow come lazing along and wallop herself right down in the street. Pretty soon a loafer would sing out, "Hi, sick him, tie-hee." Away the sow would go squealing, with a dog or 2 swinging to each ear. The loafers would stand up to watch the thing out of sight and laugh at the fun. Then they would settle back till their dog was a fight. By noon the crowd was thick and more people coming all the time. By and by somebody said, "Here comes old Boggs, in for his little old monthly drunk. Here he comes, boys." All the loafers looked glad. One of them said, "Wonder who he's going to chew up this time." Another one said, "I wish old Boggs would threaten me. Then I'd know I wasn't going to die soon." Boggs comes tearing along on his horse, weaving about in his saddle and yelling like an Injun. "Clear the truck thar. I am on the warpath and the price of coffins is going up." He was over 50 years old and had a very red face. Everybody yelled and laughed at him. He sassed back and said he would attend to them and lay them out in their turn. Then he saw me and rode up and said, "Where you come from, boy? You prepared to die?" I was scared, but a man said, "He always carries on like this when he's drunk." The best-natured old fool in Arkansas never hurt nobody, drunk or sober. Boggs rode up before the biggest store in town, bent his head down to look under the whining, and yelled, "Come out here, Sherburne. Come out and meet the man you swindled. You are the hound I'm after." He went on calling Sherburne everything he could lay his tongue to. The whole street was packed with people listening and laughing. By and by, a proud-looking man stepped out of the store. They said it was Colonel Sherburne. He was the best-dressed man in that town. He said to Boggs, calm and slow, "I'm tired of this. I'll endure it till 1 o'clock, no longer. If you open your mouth against me, only once after that time, you can't travel so far, but I'll find you." He turned and went back in. The crowd looked sober. Nobody was laughing. Boggs rode off abusing Sherburne as loud as he could yell. Pretty soon back he comes and stopped before the store, still keeping it up. Some men tried to get him to shut up, but he wouldn't. They told him it would be 1 o'clock in 15 minutes and he must go home right away. They tried to coax him off his horse so they could lock him up and get him sober, but it was no use. Up the street he would tear again and give him Sherburne another cussing. I walked down the street away and stopped. In 5 or 10 minutes, here comes Boggs again, but not on his horse. He was railing along bareheaded with a friend on each side holding his arms and hurrying him along. He was quiet and looked uneasy. He wasn't hanging back, but was doing some of the hurrying himself. Somebody called out, "Boggs." It was Colonel Sherburne. He was standing still in the street and had a pistol raised in his right hand, tilted up towards the sky. Boggs and the men turned around to see who called. When they saw the pistol, the two men let go of Boggs and jumped to one side. The pistol barrel comes down slowly and steady to a level. Boggs throws up both hands and says, "Oh Lord, don't shoot." Bang goes the first shot, and he staggers back, clawing at the air. Bang goes the second shot, and he tumbles backwards to the ground, heavy and solid, and his arms spread out. Colonel Sherburne tossed his pistol onto the ground and turned and walked off. Some men took Boggs to a little drugstore, the whole crowd following. I rushed and got a good place at the window. They laid him on the floor and put a large Bible under his head and another spread on his breast. He made about a dozen long gasps, his breast lifting the Bible up and down. After that, he was still. He was dead. The crowd was pushing and shoving to get at the window to have a look. The people behind saying, "Say now, you've looked long enough, fellows. It ain't fair for you to stay there all the time and never give nobody else a chance." Well, by and by somebody said Sherburne ought to be lynched. In about a minute, everybody was saying it. So away they went, mad and yelling, and snatching down every clothesline they passed. They swarmed up to Sherburne's fence, and somebody yelled, "Tear down the fence." There was a ripping and smashing, and down she goes. The crowd rolled in like a wave. Just then, Sherburne stepped out onto the roof of his front porch. With a double-barreled gun in his hand, the racket stopped, and the crowd sucked back. Sherburne let his eye run along the crowd. They dropped their gaze and looked sneaky. Then Sherburne laughed a scornfully way and said, "The idea of you thinking you had pluck enough to lynch a man because you are brave enough to tar and feather poor outcast women that come along here. You think you have grit enough to lay your hands on a man? Why, a man is safe in the hands of 10,000 of your kind, as long as it is daytime and you are not behind him. I know you clear through. The pitifulest thing out is a mob. That is with what an army is a mob. They don't fight with courage born in them, but with courage borrowed from their mass and from their officers. But a mob without any man at the head of it is beneath pity. Now you drop your tails and go home and crawl in a hole. If any real lynching is to be done, it'll be done in the dark, Southern fashion, and when they come, they'll bring their mass and have a real man along. Now leave." He tossed his gun up across his left arm, and the crowd washed back and broke apart, and went tearing off in every which way. I left too, because I didn't want to stay either.